Jake Miller woke up in his small room on the big spaceship called Aurora's Edge. The ship was flying through space. Far from Earth, Jake rubbed his eyes and looked at the clock on the wall. He was late for work again. The ship was not like the ones humans usually built. It was much bigger and stranger. The walls were smooth and white, and soft blue lights came from everywhere. The air smelled clean, maybe too clean. Jake had been living here for 6 months now, but he still missed the smell of grass and dirt from his farm back in Kansas. Jake was one of 12 humans on the ship. The rest of the people living here were not human at all. They were called Zephyrians. Jake had never seen anything like them before he came to space. They were tall, much taller than humans, with skin that looked like it was made of silver metal. Their eyes were big and had many colors that moved like oil on water. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their fingers were long and thin. The Zephyrians were very smart. They could solve math problems that would take human computers hours to figure out. They could speak 20 different languages at the same time. They could remember everything they had ever seen or heard. Jake sometimes felt very stupid next to them, but the Zephyrians were also very strange. They did everything the same way, every single day. They woke up at exactly the same time. They ate exactly the same food. They even walked in exactly the same patterns through the ship. Jake had watched them many times, and they never changed anything. The leader of the Zephyrians was named Vexthera. She was even taller than the others, and her eyes had more colors. She was some kind of teacher or scientist. Jake was not sure which. She was always watching the humans and writing notes about them. Jake had seen her standing in corners just watching and writing. It made him feel like a bug in a jar. Vexthera had 30 students with her. They were younger Zephyrians, who came to learn about humans. Jake did not know why they wanted to learn about humans. Humans seemed pretty simple compared to Zephyrians. Humans could not do math like them. Humans could not remember everything. Humans made mistakes all the time. The Zephyrians ate something called nutrition cubes. The cubes were small and gray and looked like rocks. Each cube had everything a Zephyrian needed to stay healthy and strong. They ate 1 cube 3 times a day. It took them exactly 1 minute to eat each cube. Jake had timed them. Jake thought the cubes looked terrible. He had asked to try one once, but Vexthera had said no. She said human stomachs were too weak for Zephyrian food. Jake was not sure if that was true or if she just did not want to share. The humans on the ship had their own food they had brought. Lots of it from Earth. There was a big kitchen where the humans could cook and eat together. The Zephyrians never came to the kitchen. They had their own place to eat their cubes. It was very white and clean and quiet. Jake had tried to talk to the Zephyrians many times. He wanted to be friends with them, but they always seemed confused when he talked to them. They would look at him with their big colorful eyes and write more notes. Sometimes they would ask him questions that made no sense. One time Vexthera had asked him why humans moved their faces so much when they talked. Jake had not known how to answer that. The other humans on the ship were nice. There was Lisa, who grew plants in the ship's garden. There was Ben, who fixed the machines when they broke. There was Katie, who studied the stars and planets they passed. They all ate together in the kitchen and talked about home and their families. Jake missed his family a lot. He missed his mom's cooking and his dad's bad jokes. He missed his sister and her kids. He missed his dog, Buddy, who was probably wondering where Jake had gone. But Jake knew this job was important. He was helping humans and Zephyrians learn to work together. Maybe someday humans and Zephyrians would be real friends. The ship had been flying for 2 years now. Jake had only been on it for 6 months. But some of the other humans had been there from the beginning. They said the Zephyrians were getting better at understanding humans. At first, the Zephyrians had been scared of humans. They thought humans were dangerous because humans were so unpredictable. Jake could understand why they thought that. Humans did seem crazy compared to Zephyrians. Humans laughed at things that were not funny. Humans cried when they were happy. Humans hugged each other for no reason. Humans sang songs while they worked. None of this made sense to the Zephyrians, but slowly, the Zephyrians had started to accept these strange human behaviors. They had learned that humans were not dangerous, just different. Vexthera had even smiled once when Katie had shown her a funny picture of a cat. It was a very small smile, but it was still a smile. Jake got dressed in his blue work clothes. His job was to teach the Zephyrians about human farming, showed them how humans grew food on Earth. The Zephyrians found this very interesting because they did not grow food. They made their nutrition cubes in laboratories. Jake was supposed to meet with Vexthera and her students in 1 hour. They wanted to learn about corn and wheat and how humans used them to make bread. Jake liked talking about farming. It reminded him of home. But first, Jake needed to eat breakfast. His stomach was making loud noises, and he could not think clearly. When he was hungry, he walked out of his room and down the long hallway toward the kitchen. The walls were covered with pictures of both human and Zephyrian worlds. Jake liked looking at the pictures of Earth. They made him feel less lonely. As Jake walked, he did not know that today would be different from all the other days. He did not know that Vexthera had planned something special for her students. He did not know that 30 pairs of alien eyes would soon be watching his every move. He was just a hungry human who wanted some eggs and bacon before work, but sometimes the most ordinary moments become the most extraordinary ones. And sometimes, a simple breakfast can change everything. Jake walked into the kitchen area and turned on the lights. The room was quiet and empty. All the other humans had already eaten and gone to work. Jake liked eating alone sometimes. It was peaceful. What Jake did not know was that he was not alone. At all. Behind a special wall that looked like regular metal, 30 Zephyrian students were sitting in chairs, watching him. The wall was like a window that only worked one way. Jake could not see them, but they could see everything he did. Vexthera stood at the front of her students. She held a small device that could record everything Jake did. Today was a very important day for her class. They were going to study human morning food habits. Vexthera had been planning this for weeks. The Zephyrians had learned about many human behaviors. They understood why humans made loud noises with their mouths when they were happy. They understood why humans leaked water from their eyes when they were sad. They understood why humans touched each other with their hands to show friendship, but they had never studied how humans ate. The Zephyrians always ate their nutrition cubes in private. They thought eating was a very personal thing that should not be shared. So they had never watched humans eat before today. Vexthera whispered to her students to be very quiet. She told them to watch carefully and write down everything they saw. The students took out their writing tools and got ready. They were all very excited. This was like watching a rare animal in the wild. Jake opened the big cold box where the humans kept their food. The Zephyrians gasped softly when they saw how much food was inside. There were many different colors and shapes and sizes. There were round things and long things and square things. There were things in boxes and things, in bags and things in bottles. Jake pulled out a container with white oval things inside. The Zephyrians did not know these were eggs. To them, they looked like small white rocks. Jake also took out strips of red and white meat. The Zephyrians had never seen bacon before. It looked very strange to them. One young Zephyrian student, named Kixera, wrote in her notes, "The human takes many different objects from the cold storage unit. Purpose, unknown. Objects appear to be unprocessed materials." Jake also took out a bag of brown powder that smelled very strong. This was coffee. Zephyrians could smell it even through the wall. The smell was nothing like their nutrition cubes. It was wild and rich and alive. Some of the students felt dizzy from the smell. Then Jake took out a white liquid in a clear container. This was milk, but the Zephyrians did not know what it was. They thought it might be some kind of paint or cleaning fluid. Jake also grabbed a yellow block that was soft and greasy. This was butter. But to the Zephyrians, it looked like a piece of machinery grease. Vexthera watched Jake gather all these different items and put them on the counter. She was very confused. Why did one human need so many different things just to eat? When Zephyrians ate, they only needed one cube. It was simple and clean and efficient. Jake started doing something that shocked all the Zephyrians. He took one of the white oval objects and hit it against the edge of a bowl. So the object cracked open and yellow liquid poured out. Students jumped in their seats. They thought Jake had broken something by accident. But Jake did not seem upset. He took another egg and did the same thing, then another. The The Zephyrians watched in horror as Jake deliberately destroyed several. Of these white objects, yellow and clear liquid filled the bowl. Small pieces of white shell fell into the liquid. "The human is destroying the white objects on purpose," wrote student Zexorin. "This appears to be some kind of ritual destruction. Human shows no distress at breaking these items." Then something even more shocking happened. Jake noticed the small shell pieces in the bowl. Instead of throwing the whole bowl away, he put his finger right into the liquid and picked out the pieces. He did this with his bare hand. Then he put his finger in his mouth. 3 Zephyrian students fainted. The others stared with their mouths open. They could not believe what they were seeing. The human had just put his unwashed finger into food and then into his mouth. This was the most dangerous thing they had ever witnessed. Zephyrians never touched food with their hands. They used special clean tools for everything. They cleaned these tools with strong chemicals before and after every use. The idea of putting a dirty finger into food was like the idea of drinking poison. Vexthera had to sit down. She was breathing very fast. She had studied human behavior for months, but she had never seen anything like this. She began to wonder. If humans were much stranger than she had thought, Jake seemed completely normal. He did not act like he had just done something dangerous. He took a tool with many thin metal strips and began to mix the yellow liquid.
Oh.
The Zephyrians did not know this was called a whisk. They thought it was some kind of weapon. Jake mixed the liquid until it became foamy and light. Zephyrians watched the yellow color change and swirl. It was actually quite beautiful, but they were too shocked to appreciate it. Then Jake did something that made the Zephyrians think he might be crazy. Turned a knob on the cooking machine, and blue flames appeared. Real fire, right therein. The kitchen. The Zephyrians had never seen open fire except in emergency situations. Fire was dangerous. Fire could destroy a whole ship, but Jake acted like the fire was perfectly normal. He put a metal pan directly over the flames. The pan began to get hot. The Zephyrians could see heat waves rising from it. "The human has created fire," Vexthera whispered to her students. "He does not seem afraid. It's maybe some kind of human superpower." Jake took the yellow block of butter and dropped a piece into the hot pan. The butter immediately began to bubble and melt. It made a loud sizzling sound that echoed through the kitchen. The sound also went through the wall to where the Zephyrians were sitting. The sizzling sound was like nothing the Zephyrians had ever heard. It was wild and violent and alive. 2 more students fainted. The others held onto their chairs. Thought Jake might be under attack by the fire, but Jake just stood there, watching the butter melt and listening to it sizzle. He even smiled a little bit. He seemed to enjoy the dangerous sound. Vexthera realized that watching human eating habits was going to be much more complicated than she had expected. The human had not even started eating yet, and he had already done several things that should have killed him. She began to wonder if humans were much tougher than Zephyrians had thought. She told her students to keep writing. This was going to be a very long morning. Jake poured the yellow egg mixture into the hot pan. Liquid hit the melted butter and made an even louder sizzling sound. The eggs began to cook immediately, turning from liquid to solid right before everyone's eyes. The Zephyrians had never seen anything like this before. In their world, food came ready to eat. They had no idea that heat could change liquid into solid. They thought Jake was performing some kind of magic trick. "The human is changing the molecular structure of the yellow substance using thermal energy," wrote student Nixuela. "This appears to be advanced chemistry." But Jake was not done with his dangerous activities. While the eggs were cooking, he took the strips of red and white meat and put them in another pan. The bacon began to sizzle and pop. Little drops of hot grease jumped out of the pan. Some of the grease landed on Jake's hand, but he just wiped it off with a cloth. The Zephyrians could not believe their eyes. The human was letting dangerous hot liquid touch his skin, and he did not seem to care. They were sure that Jake must have some kind of special protective skin that could not be hurt by heat. The smell from the cooking bacon filled the kitchen. It was a rich, smoky smell that was completely different from anything the Zephyrians had ever experienced. Their nutrition cubes had no smell at all. This bacon smell was strong and wild and made their stomachs feel strange. Some of the students began to feel hungry for the first time in their lives. They had never felt hungry before because their nutrition cubes always gave them exactly what they needed. But this new smell made them want something they could not name. Jake did something that made the situation even more confusing. He began to do many things at the same time. He stirred the eggs with one hand, while he flipped the bacon with the other hand. At the same time, he was making the brown powder drink called coffee. He poured hot water over the powder and stirred it with a spoon. The Zephyrians tried to follow everything Jake was doing, but it was impossible. They were used to doing one thing at a time, very carefully and slowly. Jake was doing 3 things at once, and he made it look easy. The human appears to have multiple consciousness centers, wrote Vexthera. He can control different body parts independently. This suggests advanced neural development.
Ow!
While Jake was cooking, he began to make sounds with his mouth,
Ow!
humming a song from Earth. The tune was not perfect, and sometimes he forgot the words. But he seemed happy while he hummed. The Zephyrians did not understand why Jake was making these random sounds. They thought the sounds might be some kind of cooking spell that helped the food cook better. They wrote down every note Jake hummed, thinking it might be important. Then something terrible happened. Jake was flipping the bacon when one piece flew out of the pan. It landed on the floor with a small splat. The Zephyrians gasped. The food was now contaminated. It had touched the dirty floor. Surely Jake would throw it away and clean the entire kitchen. But Jake did something that shocked everyone. He looked at the piece of bacon on the floor for about 2 seconds. Then he picked it up, looked at it again, shrugged his shoulders, and ate it. He ate the floor bacon. The entire class of Zephyrians sat in stunned silence. Several more students fainted. Others began breathing very fast. Vexthera dropped her recording device. In Zephyrian culture, any food that touched an unclean surface had to be destroyed immediately. The area had to be cleaned with special chemicals. Sometimes they even had to replace the floor. But Jake had just eaten contaminated food like it was no big deal. The human has consumed floor-contaminated organic matter, Vexthera whispered. He shows no signs of distress. Human digestive systems must be incredibly advanced. Jake continued cooking, as if nothing had happened. He took the eggs off the heat and put them on a plate. The eggs were fluffy and yellow and looked very different from the liquid they had started as. Jake had somehow turned liquid into solid food using only heat and time. Next, Jake took 2 pieces of bread and put them into a machine that made them hot and brown. Zephyrians watched the bread change color and become crispy. They thought this was another form of controlled destruction, like the eggs, when the bread was done. Jake took the yellow block called butter and spread it on the hot bread. The butter melted immediately and soaked into the bread. The Zephyrians had never seen one food absorb another food before. Jake arranged everything on his plate very carefully. The yellow eggs went on one side. The brown and red bacon went on another side. The buttered bread was cut into triangles and placed next to everything else. The different colors and shapes made a pattern that was almost like art. Then Jake did something that confused the Zephyrians more than anything else. He took small containers of different powders and liquids and began adding them to his food. He sprinkled white powder on the eggs. He added black powder to the bacon. He squeezed red liquid onto everything. The Zephyrians had no idea that these were salt, pepper, and hot sauce. To them, Jake was adding random chemicals to his food without measuring or testing. They were sure he was going to poison himself. The human is adding unidentified substances to his prepared food, wrote student Kixara. He appears to be experimenting with chemical combinations in real time. But the most amazing thing happened next. Jake cut a piece of egg, a piece of bacon, and a piece of bread. Put all 3 on his fork at the same time. And he put the whole thing in his mouth and began to chew. As Jake chewed, his face changed. His eyes closed. A big smile spread across his face. He made a soft humming sound that was different from his cooking song. It was a sound of pure happiness. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as Jake's entire body seemed to relax. His shoulders dropped. His breathing became deeper. It looked like he was experiencing something wonderful. When Jake swallowed, he opened his eyes and sighed. It was a long, satisfied sigh that seemed to come from deep inside him. Then he looked. at his plate and smiled even bigger. Perfect, Jake said to himself. Just perfect. The Zephyrians had no idea what Jake meant by perfect. The food looked messy and uneven to them. But Jake seemed to think it was the most beautiful thing in the universe. Jake finished his breakfast and cleaned his plate in the sink. He hummed the same tune while he washed the dishes. Then he left the kitchen to go to work, still completely unaware that 30 alien eyes had watched his every move. As soon as Jake was gone, the Zephyrian classroom erupted into chaos. Students were talking over each other in their high musical voices. Some were still unconscious on the floor. Others were frantically writing notes. Few were just staring at the wall with their mouths open. Vixthera had to bang on her desk several times to get everyone quiet. When the room was finally silent, she looked at her students with her big, colorful eyes. She had been teaching for over 50 years, but she had never seen anything like what they had just witnessed. "Students," she said in her careful voice, "we have just observed something very important. The human morning food ritual is far more complex than we thought." A young student named Pixoro raised one of his 4 hands. "Teacher, why did the human destroy the white oval objects? Is it some kind of sacrifice?" "I believe," said Vexera, slowly, "that the human was transforming the objects into a different state. The heat changed their molecular structure. This suggests that humans understand advanced chemistry better than we realized." Another student, Zixana, looked very worried. "Did teacher, the human touched the food with his bare hands. He ate contaminated matter from the floor. How is he still alive?" Vexthera thought about this for a long time. "Human immune systems must be incredibly strong," she finally said. "Much stronger than ours. They can survive contact with dangerous substances that would kill us." The students began talking again. Student Kixara had a different idea. "Maybe the floor contact was not an accident," she said. "Maybe the human needed the floor bacteria to help digest his food. Maybe humans need dirt to survive." This caused even more discussion. The Zephyrians began developing theories about why humans needed to eat dirty food. Maybe the bacteria helped break down the complex chemical combinations Jake had created. Maybe humans had evolved to need dangerous substances to stay healthy. Student Nixuela had been writing notes the whole time. She stood up and read from her paper. "I observed the human perform multiple tasks simultaneously. He controlled fire, transformed matter, and created sound patterns all at the same time. This suggests that human brains work very differently from ours." "Yes," agreed Vexthera. "We can only focus on one task at a time. But the humans seem to have multiple consciousness streams running in parallel. This could explain why humans are so unpredictable." The students spent the next hour discussing every detail of what they had seen. They talked about the colors and smells and sounds. They tried to understand why Jake had added the mysterious powders to his food. They wondered why he had arranged the food in patterns on his plate. Slowly, a theory began to form. Student Kixara was the first to say it out loud. "Teacher, I think the human morning food ritual is not just about nutrition. I think it is about something else." "What do you mean?" asked Vexthera. The human showed signs of pleasure during the eating process. His facial expressions changed. His body language became relaxed. His brain seemed to enter a different state. This suggests that the food ritual serves a psychological function as well as a nutritional one. This was a completely new idea for the Zephyrians. They ate their nutrition cubes because they needed energy. The cubes tasted like nothing and gave them no pleasure. But Jake had seemed to enjoy every bite of his chaotic breakfast. Vexthera realized that her students might be onto something important. "So you think humans use food for emotional regulation, as well as physical sustenance?" "Exactly," said Kixara. "The random chemical combinations, the heat transformation, the multiple textures and colors, all of this might stimulate the human brain in ways that improve their mental state." Another student got excited. "That would explain why humans are so creative. Their morning food ritual prepares their brains for complex thinking by exposing them to chaos and unpredictability." The class began to buzz with excitement. They thought they had discovered the secret of human intelligence. The messy, dangerous, illogical breakfast ritual was actually a sophisticated brain training exercise. Vixthera Felt like she was on the edge of a major breakthrough. Students. I think we need to observe more humans during their morning food rituals. We need to see if Jake's behavior was typical or unique. Over the next week, the Zephyrians set up secret observation points throughout the human dining areas. They watched every human eat breakfast, and what they saw amazed them even more. Lisa Garcia made flat, round food items that she covered with sweet liquid. She arranged fruit and flower patterns on top. The Zephyrians thought this was advanced artistic expression combined with nutrition. Ben Torres created towering structures using bread, meat, cheese, and vegetables. The structures looked like they should fall over, but somehow they stayed together. The Zephyrians were impressed by his engineering skills. Katie Johnson consumed only dark liquid and sweet pastries for breakfast. She drank the liquid while reading reports on her computer. She seemed to gain energy from the liquid that allowed her to work at incredible speed. The Zephyrians thought the liquid might be some kind of performance enhancer. Each human had completely different breakfast habits. Some ate hot food, some ate cold food. Some ate many small items, others ate one large item. Some ate quietly, others talked and laughed while eating. Some took 5 minutes, others took an hour, but they all seemed to enjoy their food. They all made pleased expressions while eating. They all seemed more alert and happy after breakfast than before. The Zephyrians became convinced that breakfast was the key to understanding human superiority. Humans were not stronger or smarter than Zephyrians individually, but their morning food rituals somehow prepared their brains for creativity, adaptability, and innovation. Vexathera called a meeting with the ship's captain. She needed permission to conduct a formal research study. She wanted to document what she was calling the Great Human Morning Nutrition Ritual and its effects on cognitive function. Captain, she said, I believe we have discovered why humans are so unpredictable and creative. Their breakfast rituals stimulate their brains in ways we never imagined. This could revolutionize our understanding of intelligence and consciousness. The captain, an older Zephyrian named Hexther, listened carefully. He had been wondering why the humans on the ship seemed to solve problems that stumped his best scientists. Maybe Vexthera had found the answer. Professor, he said, you have my permission to conduct this research, but be careful. If human breakfast rituals are as powerful as you think, we must study them safely. Vexthera was thrilled. She was going to write the most important research paper in Zephyrian history. She was going to explain the secret of human success. She had no idea how wrong she was about to be. 3 weeks later, Jake was walking through the ship when he heard strange noises coming from the library. He could hear many Zephyrian voices talking at once. This was unusual because Zephyrians were normally very quiet. Jake peeked through the open door and saw something amazing. The entire library was covered with papers and charts and diagrams. There were pictures of eggs and bacon and coffee cups everywhere. Mathematical equations covered the walls. It looked like someone was trying to solve the mysteries of the universe. In the middle of all this chaos sat Vexthera. She had stacks of notes piled around her like small mountains. Her 4 hands were writing on different papers at the same time. She looked tired but excited. Jake knocked on the door. Excuse me, Professor Vexthera, can I come in? Vexthera looked up from her work. Her big eyes went wide when she saw Jake. Oh, human Jake. Yes, please enter. You arrive at a perfect time. Jake stepped into the library and looked around. He saw charts that showed the temperature of cooking bacon. He saw diagrams that explained how eggs changed from liquid to solid. He saw mathematical formulas that tried to calculate the perfect amount of salt and pepper. What is all this? Jake asked. Vexthera stood up proudly. This is my research into the Great Human Morning Nutrition Ritual. We have been studying your breakfast habits for weeks. We believe we have discovered the secret of human intelligence. Jake blinked several times. My breakfast habits? Yes. Vexthera was very excited. We observed you preparing your morning meal 3 weeks ago. The complexity was astounding. The way you used fire and chemicals and multiple simultaneous processes, it was like watching advanced science. Jake looked at a chart that showed the exact sequence of how he had made scrambled eggs. Someone had timed every step and measured every ingredient. You were watching me eat breakfast? We were studying your cognitive enhancement ritual, Vexera corrected. The way you transformed raw materials into complex chemical combinations while performing multiple tasks and creating audio patterns. We believe this daily practice is what makes humans so creative and adaptable. Jake stared at her. You think my breakfast makes me smart? Of course. Vexera pulled out a thick folder of papers. Look at our research. We observed 12 different humans performing their morning nutrition rituals. Each one was unique and complex. Lisa's artistic fruit arrangements clearly stimulate visual processing centers. Ben's structural sandwich engineering develops spatial reasoning. Katie's liquid stimulant consumption enhances focus and energy. Jake sat down in a chair. This was the strangest conversation he had ever had. Professor, I think there might be some confusion here. But Vexera was not listening. She was too excited about her discoveries. We have calculated that the average human breakfast ritual involves 47 different decision points, 12 distinct chemical processes, and at least 6 sensory inputs. The cognitive load must be enormous. No wonder humans can solve problems that stump our best scientists. Jake tried again. Professor, I just eat breakfast because I'm hungry. Vexera looked at him like he had said something very wise. Yes. The hunger response triggers the ritual. Brilliant. The body's need for energy activates the brain training sequence. Evolution has programmed humans to enhance their intelligence every morning. Jake realized that explaining this was going to be harder than he thought. Vexera had spent weeks developing her theory. She had charts and graphs and mathematical proofs. She was completely convinced that breakfast was a sophisticated brain enhancement system. Professor Jake said gently. What if I told you that breakfast is just ... breakfast? What if humans don't think about brain training or cognitive enhancement? What if we just eat food because it tastes good? Vexera tilted her head. Tastes good? I do not understand this concept. Jake realized that this was the real problem. Zephyrians ate nutrition cubes that had no taste. They'd never experienced the simple pleasure of enjoying food. They could not understand that humans might eat for reasons other than efficiency. Would you like me to show you? Jake asked. Vexera looked nervous. Show me what? How to make breakfast? The real reason? Humans do it. Vexera thought about this for a long moment. Oh. Then she nodded. Yes. I would like to observe the ritual from close proximity, for scientific purposes. The next morning, Jake met Vexera in the kitchen. She came wearing protective gear and carrying scientific instruments. She looked like she was about to perform a dangerous experiment. Professor, you won't need all that equipment, Jake said with a smile. But the fire, the chemicals, the contamination risks, ... double quotes, Vexera protested. Me, Jake said. Just watch and try to feel what I'm feeling. Jake began making breakfast exactly the way he had 3 weeks ago. But this time he explained everything he did. When he cracked the eggs, he told Vexera how satisfying it felt to break them just right. When he cooked the bacon, he described how the sizzling sound made him happy because it reminded him of weekend mornings with his family. Vexera watched carefully. But she also began to notice things she had missed before. She saw how Jake's face relaxed when he smelled the coffee. She noticed how he smiled when the butter melted perfectly on the toast. She observed how he hummed not because it was part of a ritual, but because he felt good. The pleasure response is not a side effect, Vexera said slowly. It is the main purpose. Exactly, Jake said. We don't eat breakfast to make ourselves smarter. We eat breakfast because it makes us feel good. And when we feel good, everything else gets a little better too. Jake made an extra portion and offered it to Vexera. She looked at the plate. Of scrambled eggs and bacon and toast like it might explode? But then she took a small bite. Her eyes went wide. Not because of fear or confusion, but because of surprise. The food had flavor. It had texture. It was warm and rich and completely different from her nutrition cubes. This is ... She paused, searching for words. This is pleasant. Jake grinned. That's the whole point. Over the next hour, Vexera ate her first real breakfast. She discovered the joy of crispy bacon and fluffy eggs. She learned that butter made everything taste better. She found out that coffee could be bitter and sweet. At the same time, but most importantly, she understood that humans had not created some complex brain training system. They had simply learned to find happiness in everyday moments. They had turned a basic need into an opportunity for pleasure and comfort. When they finished eating, Vexthera sat back in her chair and sighed. It was the same satisfied sigh that Jake had made 3 weeks ago. "I must rewrite my entire research paper," she said. "What will you write about?" Vexthera thought for a moment. "I will write about how humans have discovered something we never learned. You have found a way to be happy while doing necessary things. You turned survival into celebration." Jake nodded. "Maybe that's why we seem so strange to you. We don't just live efficiently. We try to live joyfully." Vexthera looked at her empty plate and smiled. It was a real smile, not the careful expression she usually wore. "Perhaps," she said, "we Zephyrians could learn from this human wisdom." From that day forward, Vexthera began teaching a new class. Instead of studying human breakfast as a cognitive enhancement ritual, she taught about the human ability to find meaning and pleasure in simple daily activities. Her students learned that sometimes the most profound discoveries come not from complex theories, but from understanding the beauty of ordinary moments. And every morning, Vexthera joined Jake in the kitchen for breakfast, not to study human behavior, but to experience the simple joy of starting each day with something delicious.